mind you, by page 300, other books have already finished. And this book should have too, if you ask me. Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today specifically we are gonna go through my November reading wrap-up. Now in November I managed to read 8 books, or to be really candid, I read 7 books and listened to one of them. So let's head right into it. Now, the first book I picked up is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I made an entirely different reading vlog for this, so if you want to hear like detailed thoughts, an in-depth review and all of that, check out that video. But basically, you might have heard of Silvia Moreno-Garcia because she's the author of The Mexican Gothic. That's the only other book that I have heard of really from her. And I decided to pick this one up, to be really honest, solely judged by its cover because it was so beautiful. I decided to pick it up, and as I talk about it in detail in that other video, it did not really work out for me because this is a fantasy romance and I like neither fantasy nor romance, so you can guess that this was not exactly for me. I went into this with like the wrong expectations because I knew only of Mexican Gothic by the same author, knowing that that is kind of like this horror story. So I thought maybe this is going to be something like that as well, but no, in no way, shape or form. And now I've heard about some of her other books, and apparently she usually writes stuff like this, like kind of like fantasy romance stories, and that Mexican Gothic one, that was the one exception and not the other way around. So I guess I should have done my research, eh? So this is about our 2 main protagonists. Sorry, I have to look up the names again. Oh yeah, Hector and Nina, both of them have telekinetic powers, but that's already the extent of the fantasy element in this book. And then other than that, it's just about like their love story basically, which I found to be really predictable, which made it even more boring than it would have already been because I don't like romance in the first place. I will give it to it though that it is beautifully written. There's like nice details of like the gowns, the society, because this has kind of like Bridgerton vibes in terms of like the balls they go to and all of that jazz. So that was fun, I guess, but also that is not like necessarily something I'm into. So yeah, this was not really my thing at all. But if you're looking for something for like a romance with a bit of a fantasy twist, you could check this one out, I guess. The second book I picked up this month was the one I listened to, and that was Jane Eyre. I had to read it for my university class that I'm taking because it's on the syllabus. But I gotta say, I was actually positively surprised by Jane Eyre because, you know, I mean, I am per se not against classics. I actually kind of really like classics, but still with some of them, sometimes you're kind of iffy about them, like, is this gonna be like really boring? And I kind of had that feeling about Jane Eyre, if I'm being really honest, but it turned out to be so much more than I had expected of it, because so much ended up happening within that book that was really quite crazy. Like, it was kind of like the opposite of boring considering all the things that in total happen within this book. So basically we follow the little orphan child Jane Eyre and her, and like I'd say roughly 10 years of her life. Is that correct? I would say so, because like at the end of the book she's 19, which sounds really young to us, but like back then you were already having like your midlife crisis at that point, especially if you were a woman and not yet married. You were a spinster, that's for sure. But anyway, that's fortunately not really what this book is about. But yeah, we follow Jane throughout her kind of like upbringing in a school in Lowood, and then she becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she falls in love with the master of the hall, Mr. Rochester. So far it sounds really straightforward, like a romance, a love story, but it is so much more than that, because then a bunch of crazy shit starts happening, right? Including attempts on her life, crazy lunatics being locked up in attics, dramatic revelations being made in church, sudden inheritances of fortunes by like distant relatives. Like, this book has all that. To be really honest, this sounds blasphemous to even say, but I kind of thought that Jane Eyre had like real telenovela material in it, because like this entire trope of like someone is being set on fire. There's like this lunatic in the attic. Someone is disguising themselves as someone else to find out how the other person is really feeling about them. Then this big dramatic scene at the church where secrets are being revealed, distant relatives dying, and suddenly you are rich, and all of that. That felt to me kind of like telenovela style, like being really dramatic and over the top, etc. But again, I know that's kind of a blasphemous thing to say about a classic like Jane Eyre. But yeah, because so many, well, crazy shit ended up happening in this book, I was kind of surprised. Plus now we in this class I'm taking, we are kind of starting to like analyze it also and interpret stuff, and it's kind of crazy because at first I was just surprised on like a content level that it was like more was going on than I had expected, but I still thought that at times Jane was a bit of a wet wipe, because like at times she has like really strong opinions, and especially as a child she's really outspoken and she speaks her own mind, etc. But then as she becomes older, she becomes more subdued, and like there are a few instances where she basically just does as she's being told by either Mr. Rochester or by like other people, etc., where I thought like, okay, like this girl has no opinion of herself basically. But now we're looking at a few like interpretations of the novel, and there are like some crazy, let's call it maybe conspiracy theories about the book out there that, for example, say that Jane, because she's narrating this book in like a first person narrator, and then she's like lying to the reader all the time. Plus there are other like theories or readings of the book that say that, like, spoiler, Bertha, so like the crazy first wife of Mr. Rochester that's locked up in the attic, is like Jane's dog alter ego, or like Jane's dog double or something like that. Like there are some crazy theories out there which make me look at this book at even more like levels, etc. So I'm really looking forward to like jumping into like the analysis, into interpretation within the following weeks, because yeah, this novel, it ended up serving. Let's just say that. Moving on to the third book I read this month. This time I, like all the other books I read, Jane Eyre was the only one that I listened to. So the third book I read, this is definitely one of my favorites this month. Though, I mean, I like pretty much all the other books I read this month, but this one I really, really liked. So I picked this one up because if you remember, if you saw my October reading wrap up, you know that I read my first horror novel, and that was Shirley Jackson's The Hill House. But personally, I didn't even consider it to be a horror novel. Like, I didn't think it had like real horror aspects. I wasn't scared or shocked or frightened or anything like that, and that's kind of like what I want, what I expect from a horror novel. So I decided to pick another one up that I have heard people talk about and recommend in like the horror suspense novel genre, and that was this, The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. And this one I really liked. It's still not full-on horror, don't worry, but I thought it was more suspenseful than Haunting of Hill House for sure. So what is this about? This is, shit, I keep forgetting all the names. So this is about newly widowed Elise, who now has to stay at this big country estate of her newly deceased husband by herself. She has like a far relative and like a few servants in the house with her, but basically she's all there by herself in the middle of nowhere in this big creepy house. And then these things turn up. These, I would basically, how could I describe them? These wooden cutouts. Maybe to give you like a picture. Do you know how, I only know it from like K-pop fans, how they have sometimes these life-size cutouts of like their bias, their favorite idol, in like cardboard? And it's something like that starts turning up. It's like oil paintings on top of like a wooden board. So it's like the old school variation of it. But basically these things turn up all around the house, and they are, well, they kind of have a mind of their own. Let's just say it like that. It was definitely creepy and eerie at times. I did see the twist at the end coming, just saying, right? But I really enjoyed this one. If you're looking for something similar to Hill House but more spooky, I could definitely recommend you to read this. Now, the fourth book I picked up this month, I also made a different video about, and that is Death in the Clouds by Agatha Christie. I did not only read this, but I actually tried to solve it as I was reading it, and I made an entire video about that, so please definitely check that out. I really love doing that. I'm just saying, part 2 will be coming soon, but this one is basically about a murder happening in an airplane, and Hercule Poirot is also in that airplane, and then he's trying to solve the murder. You don't need to know more, just check out the other video and see me trying to solve it. Did I succeed? We're not going to talk about that. Then the fifth book I picked up this month, or is it the fifth? Yeah, is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I picked this one up because I'm working on a video that will be coming up shortly. And this, similar to Jane Eyre, I gotta say, it was a surprise because I headed into this thinking, okay, I don't really know if this is going to give me a whole lot because I think it's going to be kind of boring, etc. But I actually, I read this super quickly because it was captivating in the end and kind of interesting to read, and I actually enjoyed it, though maybe I can't really pinpoint why I enjoyed it, but I did. So The Remains of the Day is basically about a butler in 1956, and he's taking a vacation for the first time in forever, and as he's going on a little country road trip in England, he's reminiscing about his past days working at this country hall, Darlington Hall, about all the things that happened there, his former master, big international politic events that went down at Darlington Hall, and how he himself was involved in them. Basically, I think this book is about this butler's loyalty towards his former master, towards the hall he's working out, towards his job. It's like a manifesto of his undying devotion for all these things, how internalized he has this role as the butler in himself, because his dad was also already a butler, so of course that comes into play and all of that. I don't know, I still kind of have to structure my thoughts on this book somewhat more eloquently so I can say something smart in that other video I will be working on. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised by this because yeah, a butler telling you about his days working at a country estate, it doesn't sound that interesting, right? But I don't know, it kind of was in the end. This one I think I'm looking forward to the most to talking to you about, because this one I have not talked about yet in another video, and I have a few things to say, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I have finally read this. I have finally read the mother of the dark academia genre, and I was not pleased. Where to even begin? Good question. So you might already know this is the book that has kind of kicked off the trend very recently, or is supposed to be, as I just said, the mother of the dark academia novel trend. This came out already in 1992, so it's not like a recent publication, but still it's supposed to be kind of like the oranges of the dark academia genre that we see in the publication world right now. Now, other dark academia novels I have read, I have really liked, because in general I really like that vibe of murder at university and people being really erudite and reading all the time and being in libraries and stuff. I like that shit, okay? But this book, it kind of, I wouldn't say that it ruined it for me, but the thing that I personally think is wrong with this book, it is way too long. It doesn't even look that long, does it? But let me tell you, it really, really is. It isn't only way too long, it also moves at an excruciatingly slow pace. So basically, it's about this friend group studying at a New England college. They're studying classics. It's a really tiny elite group of students. And we get to know, this is not a spoiler, we get to know in the prologue on page number 1 that within this friend groups, all of the friends kill one of the friends. So we already know the big thing happening in the book. It's already being spoiled on page number 1. But that was the thing why I headed into this with false expectations, because I was oh shit, if already page 1 we know what's gonna happen, this is gonna be really fast paced, there's gonna be other crazy shit happening as well or something like that. Well, no. On page 1 we get to know what actually happens, but that event only happens on page 300. Mind you, by page 300 other books have already finished. And this book should have too, if you ask me. Because right in the beginning, we get to know the big major event of this entire novel. And then the 300 pages leading up to this event, we get to know the characters and all of that. And of course, also the background of why they kill him, But all of that could have been said in less than 300 pages, if you ask me. And then the 300 pages afterwards are kind of about, of course, the aftermath of them having killed him, but again in such unnecessary detail, though that's not even true because not a lot happens, and still Donna Tartt manages to finish 300 pages more with all of it, and only in the very end there's like something happening again. I don't know, the length of this book simply frustrated me to a degree that I did not enjoy it in the end, because you could easily challenge me to condense this 629 page book to 300 pages. I think I could easily do it. And now, of course, I know that we need our descriptive passages where not a lot is happening. We need to get to know our characters, etc. Yes, of course, but not in 600 pages. Like other authors in like a 300-page long book also managed to let you get to know the characters, to set the scene, to have like a vision in your head without boring you for 600 pages. Plus the ending, not only the ending, but again, the sheer length of this book at the end made me look back onto the whole thing, being like, what was the point of that? Like, was it worth reading this? What is the ending anyway? Like, I don't really know if I like the ending or not, but basically everything about this book in the end made me look back onto it and be like, what was that? Did I just waste my time? Why is it 650 pages long? I don't know. I feel kind of frustrated because, of course, I really wanted to like this, like the mother of the dark academia genre. Hell yeah, give it to me. But then it ended up being so long-winded, taking so long to come to the point, but like simultaneously spoiling the main event on like page number 1, that yeah, I felt really frustrated about this book. I gotta say, I cannot wholeheartedly, I think, recommend this to anyone except you like reading basically 600 pages with very little happening. And I don't do that. This was a letdown, to be honest. I was really kind of pissed by the end because yeah, I don't even want to talk about it anymore, but this could have easily been a 300-page novel, and I don't see why it is not. Okay, I'm done with my rant on The Secret History. Now let's move on to the next book I read, and that is we're doing a full 180, I would say, because the next book I picked up is this is XOXO by Axie Oh. I wonder if that was intentional, to be honest. And this is a K-pop fanfiction. That's the best way I can describe this. I also made a separate video about this, so you can also check that one out. But yeah, I mean, this one, the title K-pop fanfiction, do I even need to tell you the plot? You already know what the plot is. So it's about our good girl, Jenny. She's like a real good student. She's a real talented cellist. She takes everything really seriously. But then she meets this boy, right? And they spent this one night together, and she kind of has a crush on him, but he's gone again. But then they meet again in Seoul, and only then she finds out that he's part of the biggest K-pop boy group in the world. And then they end up going to the same school, and of course things get complicated. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's exactly what you would think this one is. But considering I don't like romance, I don't really like YA stuff. I have never read fan fiction, and I don't really plan on reading fan fiction. Considering all that, this book wasn't even that bad, to be honest. It was definitely less cringy than I thought it was gonna be, though of course it has its moments. But in general, it is less cringy than I thought it was gonna be. This is, I think, a very good book recommendation, of course, like to any K-pop romance fan out there, but this is also good present recommendations. If you're looking for a good book to give to like the K-pop fan in your life, definitely go with this one. I think they're gonna enjoy it. Last but not least, the last book I picked up this month, I also made a separate video about, and that is Murder, She Wrote, which is the 4th feature of my cinematic book club. In my cinematic book club, I connect TV series or movies with the books they're based on. But this time it was actually the other way around, because the TV series Murder, She Wrote existed before the book series. It has only now been recently turned into this book series. So I picked one of the novels up. I did not actually enjoy it that much comparing it to the series, because the series is really close to my heart. So this being, it's not only being transported to the 21st century all of a sudden, whereas in the series takes place in the 80s and 90s. But because like the voices of the characters were also not at all similar to the one in the series, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, to be honest. The mystery, the murder in here, it was okay. This is basically about Jessica, our main character, and like a wedding party being snowed in at a hotel in like the century's worst blizzard. And well, then suddenly people start dying and she has to figure out who's the killer before everybody's dead. It's like this typical Agatha Christie like scenario of like people being locked in a location and people start dying, etc. That setting is always good. I feel like it just does the job. The ending was kind of weird, I'm not gonna lie. It was like, that's the only thing you could come up with solving this one. But yeah, it was fine, but I definitely like the series more than the book series, and that doesn't happen often, obviously. Now, these were all the 7 books I read and the 1 book I listened to this month. To be really honest, I also ended up picking up 1 more book this month, but I'm still, or like in November, but I'm still working on that one, and I'm reading that for an upcoming video, so I don't want to spoil that right now, but there's good stuff coming soon. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, I feel like I read a whole variety of genres and books, so maybe you got something out of this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye!